Okay, good evening and welcome to our May 12th, 2015 Ogden City Council special meeting. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present with the exceptions of Councilmember Blair, who is asked to be excused tonight. The first item on our agenda is the approval of minutes. The first set of minutes are for the regular meeting of March 24th, 2015. Councilmember Gochner.
Yes, I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
And then of the closed executive session of March 24th, 2015, Councilmember Wicks.
Thank you, Chair Heyer. I reviewed those, found them to be accurate, and would make a motion that we approve the minutes in items A and B.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wicks, seconded by Councilmember Gochner to approve the minutes. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Next item is our common consent agenda. There's those two items on there. They're both to set public hearings. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that we set the public hearings for May 26th for items A and B.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner and seconded by Councilmember Garner to set public hearings on items A and B. And this is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Next is a public hearing concerning fiscal year 2016 to 2012, the 5-year consolidated plan. This will be from Mr. Ogden. Welcome, Mr. Ogden. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you. Members of the council, it's my pleasure to present the discussion on the 5-year consolidated plan. I have a little presentation here. Slide. Get that. Try and move through some of these slides. We discussed. This is taken from a presentation that we had our work session. It was a public work session several weeks ago, and just wanted to kind of reiterate some of these points and put them on the record. And so we're talking about the 5-year consolidated plan from fiscal year 16 through 20. Is there a way to do this so I don't have to reach over there? Maybe I'll just move over. So the purpose of the consolidated, or that we're trying to achieve tonight, is to adopt the 5-year consolidated plan, to adopt our annual action plan for the coming fiscal year, and to renew our neighborhood revitalization strategy area, and to approve some program guideline changes. So we'll get into those really quickly. What the CON plan does for us. The consolidated plan is an application to renew our entitlement status for federal funding through the Community Development Block Grant and the home funds that we are an entitlement community for. It's a review of our demographic, socioeconomic conditions, a strategic planning tool that helps us identify and prioritize our housing and community development, community and economic development needs. Requires citizen participation. It's an outline of what the city plans to do with its HUD funds over the next 5 years. And there are some certifications that have to do with things like fair housing and labor standards and things like that, federal requirements that we have to comply with. This plan anticipates a total of $8.1 million the city would receive or generate over the next 5 years. So that's a significant grant to the city, and we've been involved in this since the late 70s in the federal grant programs. An interesting point is that with those federal grants have been continually decreasing over the past few decades, and this 5-year period will be an amount $2.6 million less than what it was in the prior 5-year period. So that's a fairly significant drop. It's something that we've seen coming, and we hope that it's flattened out, but you can never tell with Congress. So we're trying to do the best and leverage the money as much as possible. In order to spend that money, we're asked to come up with strategies to address the community needs. So we identify our priority needs. lay out strategies and objectives to address those needs, and then we have annual action plans that we implement each year for the expenditure of those funds. The annual action plan outlines programs that are funded, sets goals for the year, details the budget, and includes, again, those certifications. And it forms the formal application for the block grant and the home funds that we get each year. So we'll kind of quickly go over the sources and uses that are included in the annual budget. This isn't the 5-year budget. This is the 1-year budget. We're anticipating a $7.3 million budget this year, with 3.8 in the community development block grant. And the reason that's so high, normally we're getting just under $1 million in block grant entitlement, but we've got some money left over from the Section 108 loan that was achieved for the track line project, and some carryover funds and some program income. So that's why that number is so high. We have $655 in home, and then some match funds which come from our housing fund from the RDA that's required to be used as a match for our home program. It's a requirement for the home program. So that's what we've been doing for the past several years, is using our RDA housing fund to match that. The city funds are anticipated in $1.3 million. And again, just to note, this is an application for the federal funds, and so we're trying to indicate what we're anticipating the city budget to do, but this does not require the city budget to include that. Of course, that's a separate process, so just want to make sure that we're all aware of that point. We received $750,000 from the state for the unit reduction program, and that will be implemented starting in July. And then the housing fund has some funds. This, of course, comes from the RDA. And so here are the line items with their budget. I won't read them all, but these are the line items that are implemented through the strategies in the annual action plan. And we'll get into that just quickly in a minute. But again, this is the $7.3 million. It shows the community development programs and budgets, as well as the business development programs and budgets. So these are our housing and community development programs. HUD requires that we meet their objectives, and so these are the 3 categories that all of our strategies fall into: providing decent, affordable housing, creating suitable living environments, expanding economic opportunities. And so I'll quickly run through a number of slides that show under those objectives, the 3 objectives, what those goals are. And the goals are kind of related to the strategies that are identified in the consolidated plan. So under the objective of providing decent, affordable housing, we have improving the quality of housing. And our quality neighborhoods line item has a goal of 12 housing units rehab per year. And again, this is just for the federal funds, so that we're establishing goals for the use of the federal funds. We also have goals for the city funds and the non-federal funds, but it's best for us to report to HUD what our goals are for the use of the HUD money. Otherwise, they get very complicated in terms of their requirements and the reporting that we have to undergo HUD monitoring for our own funds, which we don't feel like that's a good way to go. So we're just listing the HUD goals. Emergency home repairs, the other housing program, 5 housing units anticipated in the rental rehab program, 4 rental housing units every other year. Expanding homeownership opportunities, we have our own in Ogden program and the home buyer education, which we assist 45 households per year. Increasing the supply of quality and decent housing. We're obviously, we do a lot of infill housing construction, and this is the goal for the federal funds, but of course we have a much larger goal for the city funds. Community Housing Development Organization is the nonprofit that we partner with to do some of our projects, and which is the recipient of a set aside of our home funds. There's an amount each year that we need to use through a certified community housing development organization, and they are currently building the homes on 27th and Lincoln the Lincoln Cottages. Supporting the homelessness initiative, we support the Weaver County Homeless Charitable Trust, and also participate in the Weaver County Homeless Coordinating Council. Under the objective of creating a suitable living environment, we have the safety and physical appearance of neighborhoods, our demolition loan program, which can knock down homes that are too far gone to be renovated. We don't do very many of those, but we keep the program in place in case it's needed. And then, of course, the target area public improvements. And again, this is just the federally funded portion of that, one project every other year. And then under the economic development side, there's the job creation, the small business loans, creating 8 full-time jobs every year. And we easily meet that and exceed that each year. Business counseling, 500 people assisted every year. It's a lot of people going through the Business Information Center. Creating a greater access to capital, we have the Loan Loss Guarantee Program, again, a job creation initiative, and then participating in an ongoing support of the Wasatch Community Funding, which creates a loan mechanism. Economic opportunities, developing underutilized commercial properties. This is the Central Business District Revitalization Program, where there's a set aside of block grant funds to help renovate buildings that are underutilized and need a lot of repair or renovation. And then under this category, we also have the Trackline Project, the Ogden Business Exchange, which is anticipated to create 100 full-time equivalent jobs in 5 years, over the next 5 years, and to also, of course, alleviate the slum and blight conditions. Another feature of the consolidated plan is to carry forward our neighborhood revitalization strategy area, and this is a geographic targeting that where we focus some of the federal funds onto a smaller area in Ogden, and it's something that HUD recognizes as a need in many communities, and they say if we do this, they'll give us incentives. So we have, for the past several years, focused on the downtown area and the area just east of the downtown. Because we're doing this and setting some goals and focusing a portion of our federal funds there, they give us some incentives and some flexibility in the use of our funds. And it's a very important thing. It allows us to build and renovate homes and mix the incomes in the neighborhood. Otherwise, we'd be limited to everything we do being a low-income housing, which is needed, but we also need to be able to mix the incomes. And a good example of that is the Oak Den Bungalows project on 24th Street, which many of those homes are sold to households that have incomes that exceed the federal minimums, but we're able to do that through these incentives. It also creates a situation where we're able to do job creation and have a lot more flexibility in how we create jobs in terms of the reporting and the incomes available for those jobs. So we can have higher wage jobs that we create and mix the incomes on those jobs. This is a map description of the area. You can see it goes from Ogden River down to about 30th Street, from Harrison Boulevard west to the Weber River. I'm just about done with the consolidated plan discussion. There's a citizen participation element. We've conducted a lot of outreach to citizen groups, and our citizen advisory committees met 4 times during the year, and they voted unanimously to recommend that the council approve the draft as it's presented. We've in the appendix to the consolidated plan, the comments are all listed there, and they're either addressed in the strategies or there's a response listed for each of those items. The final is just kind of a quick outline of the process that we've gone through since last August up through now, we've done outreach and consultation. We've done our Citizen Advisory Committee and has met in March and April. We've had our public comment period. We've published the draft on the web and gotten it out to the public. And now we're at the point of having the public hearing for the adoption. It's required that we send it to HUD and be received no later than May 15th. And and the funds will be available on July 1. That's the federal funds, as well as, of course, the state funds, the $750,000. So that is the presentation on the consolidated plan.
Are there any questions for Mr. Ward?
A lot of these programs are
Mr. Ogden?
Yes.
You have two last
You
names,
call
I'm
me
sorry.
whatever.
East Central area of Ogden. Are there other programs that are outside that area that we
Yes.
can participate in?
Yes. The HELP program is a very important program, and it's becoming very popular. That's a citywide program that provides a homeowner renovation loans for exterior items mainly, but we've done a lot of, and code-related items, building code upgrades. So we've done a lot of roofs, driveways, exterior improvements, a lot of sewer lines, water lines, and things like that. So that's available citywide. We also have a volunteer partnership program, and in this coming June, we'll be renovating and sprucing up 25 homes in the Ron Clare neighborhood. So there's a few things that are available. The emergency home repair program, obviously, is available outside
Thank you.
that area. Anything else?
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks. So we'll just move on to the, quickly, just three more slides. Program guideline updates. Just to kind of give a little background on how HUD looks at our program guidelines. We use HUD money for many of these programs, but HUD does not require us to get their approval of what our guidelines are. As long as they meet their standards, we develop our own guidelines. So they're not included in the consolidated plan. That gives us the flexibility to adopt our guidelines and to change them as we see fit to meet our own needs. So we're only doing this because they tag along, not that they're required for the consolidated plan. They're not included in the consolidated plan. So the ONA-Ogden program guideline changes, some very minimal ones and another one that I'll explain. The guideline currently allows for duplexes and triplexes and fourplexes to be assisted with, as long as they're owner-occupied. But there's some glitches with the federal funds relative to the tenants that occupy the other units. If it's owner-occupied and there's a duplex or triplex or fourplex, then it becomes onerous for the federal reporting and requirements for the incomes of the other people that are occupying that structure. So it's really only logical to use non-federal funds. So we've kind of done that restriction so that if we have non-federal funds, we can do those larger units. If not, then we won't do them. Allowing other types of assistance, other types of down payment programs. We had a restriction on that in the past, but now it's seen as an opportunity for us to leverage outside sources to get deals done and to give people opportunity to purchase homes. So just adding other types of assistance. And then HUD has since, over the past year, given us some additional requirements on underwriting. In the past, we've been able to rely upon the bank's underwriting, the lender's underwriting, and now we have to mimic that underwriting and do it ourselves. So it's redundant, but we now have to also go through that underwriting process. And we have to evaluate the maximum amount that's needed to to provide the down payment assistance, so we have to be able to screen just a little bit. So it's possible that we may not do the full $5,000 loan. It's most likely that we will, but through the underwriting, there might be some limitations on how much we assist with. So that's really all the changes there are for the Owner Ogden program. The unit reduction program, this is the one that the state has allocated some money for, and it's a specific grant to Ogden, and it was specifically granted for these purposes, that it be used in the area 20th to 27th Street from Washington to Monroe, and that the grant amount be $20,000 per unit that's permanently removed. So we anticipate having a lot more opportunity, and we've had a number of inquiries so far and have a stack of people waiting for this money. So we're going to do some good projects, some big ones that'll be noteworthy. So it'll be a good thing. So that's the changes on the unit reduction. And the final slide is the Synchrony Bank. We've been working with GE Money Bank for the past 4 years, and every 2 years we renew that line of credit. It's a 2-year agreement, and they're happy to do it, and they want to continue to participate with us. Over the past several months, they've changed their name to Synchrony Bank, so it's the same entity. They've just kind of changed their name. So personnel and the deal and all the the line of credit amount and the security amount, which we've already got the $350,000 on deposit. It will stay on deposit. Nothing in the agreement will change except the dates. So we're asking that the council approve that renewal so that we can continue to use that $1.4 million. We use that for our new construction and our renovation programs, and over the past 4 years we've used about $4 million and done about 57 projects. So it's a well-needed resource for us. Are there any questions on the program guideline changes or the fund source?
I just have a curious question. So the unit reduction program goes from 20th to 27th, Washington to Monroe. Does that fit within all the other plan areas that we've looked at? I mean, are we overlapped? Are we missing a spot? Are we overlapping? Do we need to fill in gaps? Those kind of
In
things.
terms of some of the other programs, or?
Yeah.
That's included in the NRSA.
Okay.
It's all in there.
Within that.
It's all in the East Central neighborhood. And really the intent originally with the unit reduction was to try and capture the bigger homes in kind of the Jefferson Avenue corridor. And so it's kind of the historic area that a lot of the units were modified. There may be some that are just out of that area, but this tends to capture most of the big ones.
You mentioned that this is being used, people are requesting this money.
Oh, yes.
How
They
long
know
is it gonna
about
last?
the increase, and it's actually making deals happen that couldn't happen before.
Going to last, how long do you think?
According to the person that got this money for us, it'll be gone in a year. But it may take a little bit longer than that. And if we can spend it quickly, hopefully we'll get more. So.
Thank you.
One last question on the unit reduction. So the 20,000 that we've raised, that is that going to be a permanent change that doesn't just go with this $750,000 funding?
Well, it changes the program guideline for now, and I think that at some point, once the money's gone, we'll have to decide where we can find funds to continue that, because in the past it came from funds the council allocated for it. So if you want to continue that, that'd be great.
We'll
Maybe
just
between
evaluate it.
Yeah, we'll have to
maybe
wait and see. And,
successful.
once
Okay.
it's done. And then,
And
of course,
part
you'll get
part
to
of that
see.
is the appropriation that Jeremy Peterson helped to
That was
give
it.
the city.
Yes, that's it. Exactly.
Grateful for that part.
Oh, yeah.
All right, any more questions for Mr. Ogden? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we would like to accept public input on this. This is a public hearing. So if you have comments for the council regarding these items, would you please come forward and give us your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes? Don't see anyone coming forward. Could I get a,
So I'll make a motion that we close the public.
have-
Oh, hold on. We got someone.
oh, we do have someone. Okay, great.
My name is Brandon Bell. I'm a resident of the East Central area, part of a citizens group called the Charlie District Community Council. And I just wanted to address one issue in the con plan. We had put in, as part of our citizen participation, a request for some work to be done with regards to improving and revitalizing Lester Park. That request was denied, and the grounds for it was that it was listed as a regional park because it surrounds the city, the Weber County Library. But we wanted to note that it was, it's city property. There's another city building on the site, the Golden Hour Senior Citizen Center, and I believe the Weber County Library is actually on a lease from the city, if I'm not correct. So we wanted to request that that be reevaluated, and if not, in this particular area, that there be some focus looked at putting on revitalizing Lester Park. It's a moderate income, mixed income area. And one of the things that a lot of people are looking for today in the neighborhoods that they purchase, coming from a professional background of urban planning, is they're looking for amenities. And Lester Park is centrally located to provide those amenities to people. If we can put a little bit of funds and focus on it to a wide range of people and help increase property values and draw a wider range of property owners and residents that come from, with range of mixed income and other backgrounds. So we just, I don't know what the right avenue is for finding those funds, but if there's a way to move towards looking at revitalizing Lester Park, we feel like it's a great showpiece for our neighborhood, but that can be better utilized if it's improved and some funds are put into it. We just had a barbecue about a week ago on Make a Difference Day. We got about 40 or 50 people there, and we just want to keep events like that going, some momentum put in towards it. So if there's opportunity to revise the con plan to do that, or if there's and reevaluate whether it's classified as a regional park since it is under city ownership, or if there's other funds that could be explored from the city that we could look at focusing on do that, we would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell.
Good evening, council members, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alex Cliff from the East Central neighborhood, and also just wanted to echo Brandon's comments about Lester Park. With the upcoming library renovations, this is pretty much a perfect opportunity to, thank you, ma'am, to do some renovations in the park to make it more of a flagship park, make something that draws people to downtown Ogden. It's a fantastic place to go, a lot of opportunities there, and we'd just like to keep that going. It's right in the middle of the NRSA, and I believe that we should be able to allocate some community development block grants for that park. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alex.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain that motion.
With that, I'll make a motion then that we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks to close the public hearing. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we need to deal with these individually, so if we could.
Mr. Chair, might you want some feedback from the administration on
Sure.
the requests?
Absolutely. That would be well.
Mr. Ogden looks like he's coming to give us that feedback.
He lost the arm wrestle.
The Lester Park, we looked at that in terms of its definition, and I'll give you an example of another park that we tried to get some approval from HUD to assist, and it was the baseball park at 7th and Monroe. And the reason is that it provides a draw from not just the local neighborhood, and we're not saying region meaning outside of Ogden, although it could be. It's just that in order to qualify as a block grant assisted initiative, it has to have a use that is, it needs to be primarily used by the neighborhood, which is primarily low and moderate income. So if it were in the heart of a low and moderate income neighborhood, then certainly it would be a LOMOD benefit, because that's the park that the people use that live in that neighborhood. But because it's not, because it's primary, its functional use includes other things that draw from outside. It can't be defined as a low and moderate income benefit. So that's.
So, Mr. Ogden, are you saying because of the draw of the library and the Golden Hour Center, and that's what makes that a regional park?
And that's simply a function of it being on the same block as those facilities.
And that's a determination by whom?
Well, it's a definition.
By whom?
Well, HUD, yeah.
But the neighbors use that around there. That's a central location for all the neighbors in that area, even though they have these two other entities on that block. But the major function of the park is community or neighborhood driven in that area.
Yep.
Maybe another way to look at this is that this plan is it started a good discussion. There's been discussion amongst people in the neighborhood as far as what they would like in a park. Maybe it's time for us to look at alternative funding like ramp or, some other, we've funded improvements in other parks through those means. So maybe it's time to make sure that the suggestions rise to the top of the list when we're considering
Yeah, and we're
funding.
not saying it's not a worthy project. It's just, the HUD things are,
It might
they're
be
square pegs. You got to make sure that you got square holes.
So it might be easier to look for other funding versus wrestling with HUD over
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And I guess, clarify if I'm wrong or not, but I think we're discussing this in the upcoming budget, this park.
Yes.
Just-
It's part of it, and there are other funds of money that are appropriate uses there, and so it's high on our list of things to look at. And I completely agree with the comment that with the construction and renovation of the library, there's a real unique opportunity to revisit that and make sure that this is part of the master plan as we reclaim it. We don't know what the construction footprint for that's going to look like yet, what's going to be torn up, some of the changes that might be made, but our intent is to restore it and to make it more robust and a vibrant community gathering place. And there are, Councilmember Wicks mentioned a couple of the other alternative funding sources that might be a possibility, and we'll explore others.
Yep.
We could work with the trolley district to get some of their ideas on that.
Sure.
Couldn't we?
Yep. Anytime you can get feedback from the citizens, so Brandon and Alex, we encourage you to do that. And we know that one of our council members attends your trolley meetings quite often, so it'd be helpful to make sure we get your ideas. As just, we may not be able to do everything, but it's good to still hear from you and see what your ideas are.
In the proposed budget that we have submitted to the council is $151,000 towards that park from the community plan money. So we're starting to make movement in that direction. So that's a beginning if it's approved by the council.
Well, and maybe it would make sense to make sure that the feedback that's included in Appendix B from this plan be pulled and
It's a great idea.
referenced when we're
We'll
looking
connect
at
the
what to
worlds.
do with that.
Yep. That's a good point. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I'll make a motion for the 5-year consolidated plan to adopt the resolution.
Okay, do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Vice Chair White, to adopt the 5-year consolidated plan. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner,
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks,
Aye.
Vice Chair White,
Aye.
Chair Heyer.
Aye. That passes.
And if there is no further discussion, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed resolution 2015-7.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Garner, to to adopt Resolution 2015-7. This also is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That also passes. We have a motion on Resolution 2015-8.
I'll go ahead and make that motion.
I'll second.
Your motion is to adopt, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Stevens, to adopt.
Neil.
It's Councilmember White.
Oh, Councilmember White, thank you. Resolution 2015-9. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
A correction, it was 2015-8.
Dash 8.
8, that's right. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. And finally, item number 4, Resolution 2015-9.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposed resolution 2015-9.
I second it.
This is a motion made by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Councilmember Stevens, to adopt Resolution 2015-9. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. That passes. All right. Next item on our agenda is reports from the Planning Commission concerning artificial turf ordinance. Mr. Montgomery, welcome.
You notice he wore his green shirt today.
I did see you wore his green shirt.
I didn't even think about that.
It's ironic, too, we have a lease purchase agreement for mowing equipment after
Next.
this.
The theme night.
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the council, back in a couple weeks ago, we had presented before you a recommendation from the Planning Commission regarding a petition that had been reviewed and had a public hearing late last fall. And you continued your action on this item from the last meeting for us to look at the possible word revisions. We had presented to you in that meeting in April the proposed ordinance that had been drafted by staff that looked at if artificial turf was going to be allowed in the community, what provisions would we look at? We had also noted, of course, that the Planning Commission had recommended unanimously not to make an amendment to the ordinance. But as you directed us, we looked at taking the existing language that had been proposed, making a modification regarding turf height, and that was based on input from the public at that time regarding special recreation areas that may exist. And so as we looked at that wording, we have come back to you with a revision to the ordinance that talks about a couple of things. First of all, it sets a minimum pile height, or the height of what the blades would look like, to 1.5 inches. That 1.5 inch came about basically as we looked at other city ordinances, St. George, some other places in the southwest Las Vegas, those areas, and looked at what their standards were when they allow artificial turf. We also looked at some industry standards, and that 1.5 inches seemed to be the height that had the best natural appearance and that some of the cities adopted and have had experience with the ordinance. So we felt that would be the appropriate size height for our turf if we were going to allow that.
And that would also make it so that people can't purchase the indoor-outdoor.
Indoor-outdoor carpet and get into that. But the question that came up at the last meeting was, what about for special recreation purposes, a putting green or something like that someone may want? And we did have a resident who has done that. And so you asked us to take a look at that. So we put into the ordinance a provision that says that it's 1.5 inches, except when it's in the rear yard and the design purpose is for some type of recreational surface, and then the height can be lowered. Now, the reason we did it that way, again, is because in the proposed ordinance, we would have a no-fee permit that someone would come in and get for using artificial turf. At that time, we review the replacement, make sure it meets the other regulations of the no more than 50% of the landscaped area being artificial turf, that it has the edging, it has separation distances from living plant material. It meets the qualifications in terms of thickness of the mat and those type of things, is that it's permeable. And that would be the time that we could also say, if you've got a special purpose plan for an area, you can have a lower height as if you put it on your plan. And that way we could have that check and balance that before they get into the investment of the product, that they know what the conditions are through this no-fee permit. And if they did want a special area, then we could have this provision in the ordinance to allow that. If they wanted a putting green, if they wanted to do a Wimbledon tennis court, if they wanted to do all different types of things as a recreational type activity in the backyard, and then we would have that flexibility to allow a lower height.
Along with the 1.5 inch, it also talks about the weight of the fabric. And
Right.
do you review that with the applicants? as
Those
they
are
come
things
in?
we would go over with them as far as they bring in the product they want to install, to check, to make sure all those things are in place, that it's permeable, how is the seams going to be handled.
So they have to bring in a sample when they make the
Well,
application?
the sample, or at least the manufacturer's information about the product they're going to do. But the revision you asked us to take a look at was, how do we address that idea if they want to have some special surface in the rear yard for recreational purposes? And we think this is a good provision that would allow that to take place, have the flexibility, and allow this to go forward as you've asked us to look at.
I would assume that the manufacturers are going to have a recommendation or a recommended installation process.
Yeah, if you're buying the materials, if you're getting the quality materials, there would be recommendations of how do you install it, surface preparation, those type of
And
things.
so the inspectors that come and inspect the installation, how will they know what that is?
Generally, we wouldn't be getting into that detail. We would just do that up front with the permit, saying, okay, this
There
is what
won't be
you're
a
looking
site
at.
visit after? the
There'll be a
permit is-
site visit after it's completed, to say, make sure the permit's been completed and check it off. But we wouldn't be going 2 or 3 times to the property, look how it's all done. That's
No,
going to
no,
be.
I'm just saying that, will the inspector know how it was supposed to have been installed and be able to verify that it was?
We won't get into that detail.
Okay.
That's going to be between the homeowner and the person installing it, or the property owner and the person installing it, to
Okay.
make
All
sure
right.
it's done to their satisfaction.
Assuming that the warranty requires that? Okay.
Right.
All right.
Just like a fence, I mean, we're not checking depth of fence posts or anything like that when we check off on the fence permits, right?
Yeah, we say, yep, there's a fence put there.
It looks like it's going to stand through a windstorm. It's made out of the right stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you cover the 50% category, and that it is not permitted in the parkway or the parking there in front of the yard?
Okay, so yeah, the ordinance is really dealing with private property and the landscaping installed on private property, so it does not allow artificial turf in the park strip, because that is public property. And so as we looked at what's a reasonable amount to allow, the 50% seemed to be the general basis. As we looked at different ordinances throughout, there were so many ranges, front yard, rear yard only, 30%, 50%. Some didn't address a percentage, they just set standards. We felt just for general application that 50% seems to be a reasonable amount. The fact that it is going to be permeable helps in the runoff issue. And we felt that was just a good balance. And then you still have enough living plant material to help shade and soften the appearance of the turf.
Any more questions?
So will we come up with like a brochure that maybe gives people some guide?
Yes.
Because when you talk to people and you tell them a site plan's required, yeah, I think that's kind of
They
scary.
get nervous about what do you mean.
They do. They don't
Yeah.
know exactly what that means, and a lot of them haven't had experience with that. So maybe a brochure indicating, what the requirements are for the material and installation, as well as, what you're expecting from that.
Just like
site
we've done with the
plan.
fence permit, we have a
Yeah.
fence brochure, we have a park strip brochure.
Yeah, something like that
those are
would be
things that we do.
helpful, I
Yeah.
think.
That's a good point, because this is an educational opportunity to instruct those that are putting this fabric down to do it properly.
It really is.
It's quite an investment to do it, so if we can help them do it right.
Yeah.
Can you review the concerns that the Planning Commission had? Because they had several concerns why they denied this process.
Well, their recommendation was based on a couple of factors. As they looked at it, they felt that there was the issue of the impacts that they felt with heat islands, runoff, other items. They felt those are legitimate concerns for a community. They also felt a concern about general enforcement. How would we really be able to enforce this with the different items we have to look at as far as code enforcement? And concerned with the limited amount of staff that's there, where would this fit into all the other things they have to do? The technical details they also felt was one of those concerns. Will we get a lot of people just doing it now that it's there and not meet those standards? And, if they don't get a permit and it's in the backyard, we may never know. They had some of those types of concerns. And I think everyone has their own opinion about the aesthetics of it. During the summer, you probably don't notice much difference unless you're in a drought situation and that's green and everything else is brown, or during the wintertime. And so there's that aesthetic part also.
Well, I think if we have an ordinance, then we can govern this and enforce it a little better than if we did not have an ordinance along these lines here. But if they're going out looking at yards, which they do, in how the lawn is kept or the yard is kept, they could also maybe do this on a regular basis also in that aspect there. So.
Yeah, well, these would be things that either would be complaint driven or if they notice and they know there's not a permit for it. I mean, if you approve the ordinance.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Montgomery? Thank you. We would like to receive public input on this proposal, and we would like to make sure that we invite Pamela Clark, the petitioner, if she'd like to speak to us.
She told me she is not able to make, she has a very sick family member and had to go out of town.
Okay. If you could give us your name and address and limit
Good
your comments
evening.
to
My
3
name is
minutes.
Brad Hutchings. I represent EcoGrass. We're an Ogden-based company that sells and installs synthetic turf, as we call it. I brought a sample for you if you'd like to see it. We've been putting this in now for about a year and a half. Had extreme success, and more people are turning to it. Obviously, with the current drought conditions and the estimated growth along the Wasatch Front, it's one way to help conserve water in the state. When you talked about the installation, the reason that the homeowner would want to make sure the installation is done proper, we typically go in and put in about 5 to 6 inches of road base underneath the turf and then put a layer of sand on it. That keeps it from, when the ground is wet, from being mushy. If you just laid this over your topsoil, when you walked on it and it was wet, it would be like walking on carpet on a swimming pool almost. So that's the reason for it. This is our mid-level. We have about 12 different versions, depending on where we're putting, whether it's a putting green. We also do tennis courts and those type of things out of the turf. It's not the turf of 20 years ago, the little Home Depot. and depending on the size, the cost per square foot is fairly high compared to grass.
What is the pile height on this piece?
That's 1.5 inches.
That is 1.5 inches.
That's about what you need. Notice that they've gone so far as adding brown thatch in it. We can make it a lighter green. There's all kinds of different options inside of it. And we would suggest that you adopt some ordinances that make those requirements be part of the ordinance. We'd definitely do anything we could to help enlighten.
This product, what is the cost per square foot for that?
The cost really depends on the size, because installed, depending on the size, it'd be anywhere from $8 a square foot to $7 a square foot.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Anyone else?
If there's no further discussion, I will go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2015-17.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Wicks, to adopt ordinance 2015-17. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye. And that passes.
And I have to say thank you for all the work that has gone into this and the adjustments, and it seems like a really good thing to do. We do live in a desert.
Right. I would say we've become very educated on artificial turf, and also to Mr. Montgomery for your efforts in making sure that we have in our proposal the things that were mentioned, the proper base and the anchoring and everything that goes along with it. So thank you.
Well, and I think our citizens want to conserve water. They want their yards to look nice, and I think it's good to offer them options.
I think that's the key, is the option to it. Plus, I noticed that this fabric is porous, that the water will run right through it. But also in the ordinance, it talks about being green, so it has to be green in that aspect there. And everyone has to sign up for the opportunity to put this down in their yard, so.
If they want it, yeah.
If they want it.
I'm hesitant always to go against the Planning Commission, particularly with a unanimous vote. I need to have that on the record. The things that caused that for me to be able to vote for this is the review process, I think, is a critical aspect of this, so that somebody doesn't just kind of go and just try and do it on their own and put something that was substandard that may blow away in the wind and things of that nature. Hopefully those people, the property owners that install this, will go in with their eyes open and get themselves fully educated so that they realize that there are some responsibilities that they have to maintain, and that this isn't just something that they will be able to put in and never have to do anything with it again, that they do have a responsibility to maintain it. So I think we will see how it goes from here. Hopefully this will be a benefit.
I think the Planning Commission had some valid concerns, which we considered in their concerns, because it does generate heat, but we need to do what we can to save the water that we do have. So
that's probably my biggest concern, is that we do need to start changing the way we think about outdoor watering issues. I think that water-wise plantings are certainly a good option, and maybe the best one for most people, but this may be the option that some people choose to use and may work well for some.
But it's not a low-cost option either.
It is not a low-cost option, and that's why I think that people will get themselves educated before they spend that kind of money. So,
But they won't need a lease purchase agreement for mowing equipment.
which is up next.
Maybe a leaf blower.
Probably a leaf blower,
Yeah.
Okay, that does bring us to the next item on our agenda, which is the lease purchase agreement for mowing equipment.
Mr. Chair, Gabe Johns will be presenting the lease part, and this is his first presentation.
We'll try to be nice.
Council meeting. Richard Brookins is here to answer any questions about the equipment.
Welcome.
Thank you, Council Chair and Council members. For your consideration, we have a lease purchase agreement on mowing equipment. To give a little background, in 2012, we purchased about $500,000 worth of equipment. And at that time, we also secured a guaranteed buyback on that same equipment at about $185,000. And it was based on a 3-year term, and we are now at the end of that 3-year term, and we're seeking to pursue that option for that buyback. That being the case, the administration is requesting authorization to enter into a master tax exempt lease purchase agreement with U.S. Bank for the purchase of 21 pieces of equipment, 20 industrial mowers and 1 bunker rake. In addition to the guaranteed buyback, the vendor has also offered us a $50,000 package discount for that equipment. The specifics on the transaction The 21 pieces at state contract pricing, when we've included the buyback, comes to about $440,000. Less that $50,000 discount, we end up at $394,000 is the net purchase price. The rate we secured was 1.62%. We will be leasing it for a period of 3 years. It is a capital lease, so at the end of that period, we do have the option to purchase the equipment and own it outright. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
So how many pieces of equipment were purchased in 2012? And is this swapping out piece for piece, or are we switching things up a bit?
In fact,
Let's have Richard answer that.
Okay.
Richard, will you help answer that question? He's the genius on equipment.
And Amy, it's on page 451.
Maybe not a genius.
Yes, this pretty much swaps out piece for piece.
Okay.
We've made some changes to the equipment to meet the needs of the actual departments utilizing the equipment. So
It's
pretty
just-
much it's the same stuff.
It's hard to tell, with the Jacobson LF 570 fairway is that equivalent to?
Yeah. The
Without
only
knowing
additional
what those are.
equipment is that Bunder rake that's different than 2012. I don't see
What
that
now? I'm
listed
sorry?
in. The Bunder rake is not part of that equipment we had in 2012.
Yeah, one bunker rake was added to this for the golf, yes.
A bunker or bunder?
Bunker.
Okay. So that
In our,
should be-
in our packet, it's a Bunder. So bunker makes much more sense.
Yeah, so we have the option to purchase these after 3 years. Do you think that will be our plan, or?
But no, I don't understand.
we have the option to buy it for $1 at the end of the lease agreement.
Correct. We'll own the equipment at the end of the 3-year lease. So we have that. The guaranteed buyback on the equipment we're purchasing actually runs through 4 years. So once we pay the equipment off, we'll actually own it. We can evaluate whether it makes more sense to keep that equipment, go on, or to actually turn it in sometime within a year for equipment from them. And just to answer a question about the cost of the equipment that we're getting is actually on a state contract. So the $50,000 they're offering us or giving us is a real deal. They're actually giving us a value for that extra equipment. So
I think
The life of a mower, or a bunder, or rake.
It depends on how much artificial turf you have.
Yeah.
depends on how many hills they run off of and different things. No, 6 to 7 years would be really, really pushing it. And how we got into the current program, we had some stuff that was just absolutely, totally worn out. You'll get calls, the mayor gets calls. It's really a bad deal that people can't do their job. It'll go 2 or 3 weeks, and we can't afford to have that kind of equipment sitting around. So this is a better way. This gives us value for the stuff that we have, trading on the newer stuff. So
interest rate is a good rate, isn't it?
I'm sorry, interest rate?
The interest rate is a good rate, 1.62.
Mr. Johnson? Okay, any more questions? All right, thank you. All right, well, we have 2 items before us.
I'll go ahead and propose that we adopt Resolution 2015-10 for the master tax exemption lease.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Vice Chair White, to adopt Resolution 2015-10. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gochner?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember Wicks?
Aye.
Councilmember Garner?
Aye.
Vice Chair White?
Aye.
Chair Heyer?
Aye, that passes.
And I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2015-20 to set the public hearing for May 26, 2015.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember.
Just to clarify, it's just, we're not adopting the resolution.
You're right.
Or we're just setting the public hearing.
Second.
Right. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Gochner, seconded by Councilmember Garner, to set the public hearing for May 26th on proposed ordinance 2015-20. This is a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, we're now to the public comments portion of our meeting. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding your concerns or ideas. Please state your name and address clearly for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Seeing no movement, comments from our mayor?
Sure. I would like to remind everyone this is a really unique weekend in Ogden. We've got the Mayor's Walk on Friday night. We invite thousands of people from outside our community in to participate in the marathon on Saturday. Downtown, we usually average about 20,000 people throughout that entire event, and I'd encourage everybody to come down and see and be a part of it. It's got great energy. It highlights some of our great strengths and the sense of community that we have here. I'd like to, in advance, thank the thousands of volunteers that wake up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning to support all these runners. It's truly a community-wide effort, and would encourage everybody to get involved on some level.
I thought you were going to thank the thousands of walkers that were going to show up.
First year, I'm not sure thousands of people will show up to walk a mile with me, but I'll certainly welcome them if they do.
Did you order good weather?
Good running weather potentially could be cool and overcast, but it could also rain, and we've had successful ones in the past. I think 3 years ago it rained quite a bit the day of the race, so a bunch of wet people. Kind of kills the buzz of the finish party at the end, as everybody's cold and mildly hypothermic. So I'm confident it will hold off, and it'll be a fantastic Saturday.
If it's good, it's yours. If it's bad, it's Jay's.
Oh, that's the way things usually go, yeah.
Okay, comments from council members?
There's 60% chance, though.
But I'm sure it's in the afternoon and evening.
After 3 p.m.
After 3, yeah.
Councilmember comments?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Garner, seconded by Vice Chair White to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Just as a reminder, there will be a city council work session held immediately following this meeting in the workroom. The items for that work session are on the agenda.
Usually not the second, but